Have you ever walked into a room and felt the warmth disappear? Have you ever poured love into someone only to feel the silence echo louder than their words? My dear, when people suddenly start ignoring you, it is not always your punishment. It may be your awakening. There are moments in life when silence enters not as a friend, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. When people suddenly stop speaking to you, when the conversations grow thinner and the laughter that once filled your days becomes only a faint memory, you may feel something inside of you tighten. You may feel your heart race with the question, "What did I do?" That ache is natural, for we are human beings built on connection, on touch, on recognition. To be ignored is to feel unseen, and to feel unseen is one of the deepest wounds the human soul can endure. Yet what we often forget is that silence from others does not always mean rejection. Sometimes it is the very proof of our growth. Growth has a peculiar sound. It does not announce itself with fanfare. It creeps into your life quietly, like new leaves sprouting on a tree, like dawn breaking after the darkest night. When you begin to change, when your spirit expands and your soul demands more, the world around you senses it. Those who once felt comfortable in your presence may no longer find the same ease, for your energy has shifted. The jokes you once laughed at now seem small. The gossip you once entertained feels heavy. The patterns you once tolerated now feel too tight, like clothes you have outgrown. This is where silence comes in. People stop speaking to you not always because you hurt them, but because your very growth reminds them of what they are not yet ready to confront. It is a strange truth that when you are in pain, people surround you. They understand the language of struggle, but when you begin to heal, when you rise, when you start choosing better for yourself, suddenly the room grows empty. The silence around you becomes louder. Why? Because your healing threatens the comfort of those still resting in brokenness. They are not ignoring you out of hatred. They are ignoring you because your light exposes the cracks they have tried so hard to hide. Growth is not only your elevation, it is their discomfort. Think of it this way. When a caterpillar enters the cocoon, it does so alone. The world outside grows quiet. The familiar movements, the crawling, the clinging to branches, all of that disappears. Inside the stillness, something miraculous is happening. The caterpillar is dissolving into something unrecognizable. It is breaking itself down to be rebuilt anew, and no one applauds. No one cheers. The process of transformation happens in silence. When people ignore you, perhaps life has placed you in your cocoon. The quiet you hear around you is not punishment. It is the environment required for your wings to form. We must also understand that silence is a mirror. When someone stops calling, stops answering, stops acknowledging your presence, it reflects not only their feelings, but also your evolution. You are not who you were. You cannot be. Growth demands change, and change disrupts the rhythm others once enjoyed with you. Imagine a dance, two partners moving in perfect step, but as one grows, their pace changes, their rhythm shifts, and suddenly the steps no longer match. The dance falls apart not because one partner is wrong, but because they are no longer moving to the same music. When people ignore you, it may be because you are now dancing to the rhythm of your growth, and they have not yet learned the steps. Do not confuse silence with failure. Too often we measure our worth by how many people surround us, by how often our name is called, by how frequently we are invited into conversations. But growth is measured in depth, not in noise. Some of the strongest trees grow far from the crowd, their roots deep, their branches stretching wide into the sky. The silence of others does not diminish their strength. It is, in fact, the very thing that allows them to grow without distraction. In the same way, when people ignore you, they unknowingly create the stillness you need to discover yourself more fully. Yet, let us be honest, it hurts. It hurts when those you once held close turn their backs. It hurts when love turns into silence. Growth does not cancel the ache of being ignored, but it does give that ache meaning. Instead of asking, why me, you begin to ask, what is this teaching me? And in that shift, you see that silence is not emptiness, but space. Space to think, space to heal, space to learn what your heart truly needs. Silence teaches discernment. It shows you who values your presence and who only valued your compliance. It teaches you who stayed for your soul and who stayed for the benefits of being near you. For when the noise is stripped away, the truth becomes impossible to hide. Those who still show up in your silence are the ones who love you beyond circumstance. Everyone else was only visiting. Growth has always been lonely. The great thinkers, the artists, the leaders, all walked through valleys of silence. People misunderstood them, avoided them, ignored them because they dared to change. And yet it was that very solitude that sharpened their vision, deepened their strength, and prepared them to step into a higher calling. You too are being called higher. And the silence surrounding you is not the end of your story, but the soil from which your next chapter will bloom. So when people ignore you, do not rush to shrink yourself back into the version they once loved. Do not apologize for your wings to those who are still crawling. Instead, stand still in the silence and recognize it for what it is, a sign that you are growing. A sign that you have moved into a space where not everyone can follow. A sign that your spirit is demanding more and the world is adjusting to your expansion. One day, those who ignored you will remember your name. They will wonder how you kept rising when no one cheered. They will marvel at the strength you built in silence. But by then, you will have learned that you never needed their voices to validate your journey. You will know, deep within, that silence was never your enemy. It was your witness. It was your companion. It was the proof that you were no longer who you used to be. Distance is a curious teacher. At first, it feels like abandonment, a hollow space where laughter and closeness used to live. You may find yourself reaching for the phone, waiting for a message that never comes, watching doors close where once they were always open. The sting of distance can pierce deeper than words because silence leaves room for the imagination to torment us. But if you are patient, if you are willing to sit with that quiet ache, distance will begin to whisper its truth. It does not come to punish you. It comes to reveal connection. We often believe that connection is measured in frequency. How often someone calls, how many times they show up, how many words they spill into our ears. Yet true connection is not proven by constant presence. It is revealed when absence comes. When the closeness fades, when the chatter dies down, when the noise of daily life is no longer binding you together, who remains in your spirit? Whose presence lingers in your heart even when their body is not beside you? That is where true connection begins to show itself. Distance has a way of stripping away illusions. Many people remain in your circle not because of love, but because of habit. They are comfortable in your presence, comfortable in the routine of knowing you. But when time and distance appear, habit has no soil to grow in. Convenience disappears, and only commitment remains. Those who were with you for what you provided, your laughter, your listening ear, your generosity, begin to fade when distance removes their access. But those who were with you because of who you are will find their way back, no matter how wide the gap becomes. Think of the seasons. When winter arrives, many trees lose their leaves. The branches grow bare, and it seems as though the tree has lost its beauty, its life, its fullness. But look closely. The roots remain. What was truly essential cannot be stripped away by the cold. In the same way, Distance removes the temporary, the acquaintances, the fair weather friends, the ones who loved the sunshine but could not endure the frost. What remains are the roots, the connections that live beyond surface beauty, beyond constant visibility. Those are the ones that will endure. Distance also teaches us that not all connections are meant to last. Some people are chapters, not the entire story. They were meant to walk with you for a season, to teach you something about yourself, to hold your hand through one valley or one mountain, but not to carry you through your whole journey. When they step away, the ache feels like betrayal, but in time you come to see that their leaving was part of the design. It was distance showing you that their role was complete. Not everyone can be permanent, not everyone should be. And yet distance also magnifies the connections that are real. There are people who, no matter how far they travel, still feel close. A letter, a single call, a brief smile when paths cross again, these are enough to remind you that the bond is not broken, only stretched. With such people, time is powerless. Distance is powerless. You may go months or even years without speaking, and still, when you meet again, the heart remembers. The conversation flows as if no time has passed. That is the beauty of true connection. It does not depend on proximity, it depends on spirit. But here is the truth many resist. Distance not only reveals the connections with others, it also reveals the connection with yourself. When the crowd thins, when companionship is reduced, you must face your own company. For some, that is terrifying. For others, it becomes liberation. Distance teaches you to see whether your identity was built on the reflection in others' eyes or on the truth you know within yourself. It teaches you to ask, do I like my own company? Can I sit with myself without shrinking? Can I survive without the constant approval and attention of others? Often, we confuse attachment with connection. Attachment is need. It clings, it fears, it grasps. Connection is freedom. It trusts, it breathes, it remains even without constant touch. Distance burns away attachment because attachment cannot survive without proximity. But connection can stretch across oceans and decades and still live strong. In that way, distance acts as fire. It burns away the fragile, leaving only the gold. We must also understand that distance is not always chosen. Sometimes life pulls people apart. New jobs, different paths, shifting priorities. In those moments, we discover who is willing to bridge the gap, who makes the effort, who remembers to reach across. But even when the effort is small, if the connection is true, the bond remains. Those who value you will never let distance be the reason love dies. They may not be able to stand beside you daily, but they will remind you in ways large and small that you are not forgotten. And perhaps the hardest truth, sometimes distance is the greatest act of love. There are times when someone steps away not because they do not care, but because they do. They may feel their presence is harming more than helping. They may know their journey is pulling them in a direction that would damage yours if they tried to drag you along. Stepping back, staying silent, creating distance, these can be acts of courage, of love, of respect. In time, you may look back and realize the distance you resented was in fact protection, a hidden kindness. So when distance comes, do not only grieve what you lost, pay attention to what remains. Look closely at who still calls, who still remembers, who still cares without needing to be constantly fed. See how distance sharpens your own edges, how it clarifies your own needs, how it pushes you to stand on your own legs. And above all, see how it reveals what connection truly is. Not constant chatter, not endless presence, not convenience, but a bond that survives silence, survives absence, survives the space between. The truth is, distance does not destroy real connection. It exposes it, it tests it, it purifies it. And when all is said and done, you will find yourself surrounded not by the many who stayed only when it was easy, but by the few who remained when it was hard. That is the gift of distance. That is its revelation. That is its truth. There is a mystery in human behavior that often leaves the heart wounded and the mind restless. It is the strange way some people choose silence over acknowledgement, distance over embrace, avoidance over truth. You feel it when your presence is met with lowered eyes, when your achievements are greeted not with applause, but with quiet dismissal, when your very being is noticed by everyone except the one you long for recognition from. It hurts, it stings, it makes you wonder if you are invisible, if you have done something wrong, if perhaps you are unworthy of attention. But often, the reality is far from rejection. Often, the act of ignoring is not hatred at all. It is admiration dressed in disguise. You see, not everyone has the courage to face what shines. Light reveals things. It exposes both beauty and shadow. When you walk into a room with confidence, with growth, with grace, your very presence becomes a mirror. Some will see your light and feel inspired. Others will see it and feel inadequate. And instead of saying, "You inspire me," they choose the safer path of silence. It is easier for them to ignore you than to face the discomfort your strength awakens in their spirit. Jealousy does not always roar. Sometimes it hides behind a quiet face, a withheld compliment, an absent call. The truth is, many people admire you in secret. They watch you from afar, study the way you carry yourself, envy the courage with which you make choices, and dream of having your resilience. But admiration is a vulnerable thing. To say I admire you is to admit you have something I wish I could find in myself. Not everyone is willing to make that admission. Their pride will not allow it, so instead they ignore you. They remain silent, they choose distance. Think about it. Have you ever noticed that when you succeed, not everyone celebrates? The people you thought would cheer the loudest sometimes retreat into the shadows. They do not clap, not because you are undeserving, but because your success feels like a reminder of what they have not yet done. Your achievements shine a light on their hesitation, their delay, their fears. And so instead of standing with you, they fall back. But if you listen closely, if you look deeper, you will see that their silence is not indifference. It is admiration they cannot bring themselves to voice. We live in a world where many people are comfortable with you as long as you are on their level. As long as you are struggling together, as long as you are doubting together, as long as you are sharing the same fears, they can embrace you. But the moment you rise, the moment you step out of the circle of sameness, something shifts. Your growth becomes their mirror, reflecting the places where they have refused to grow. And while some will be brave enough to let your light call them higher, others will shrink back. Their shrinking looks like ignorance. Their silence looks like distance. But beneath it lies admiration too tender to name. Children often show us this truth without even knowing it. Watch a child who admires another. Sometimes they do not say it. Instead, they mimic. They copy the walk, the talk, the gestures. They ignore with their words but reveal admiration with their actions. Adults do the same. The ones who ignore you may be the very ones who quietly imitate you later, adopting your style, your choices, your courage. They will not credit you, they will not confess it, but their silence was never emptiness. It was awe they could not express. There is also another layer to this. Some people ignore you because your presence reminds them of their own potential. You do not only symbolize what they lack, you symbolize what they could become if they chose differently. That truth is heavy. To see you rise is to be confronted with the reality that they, too, could rise if only they had the courage to act. And rather than facing that responsibility, they turn away. Ignoring you becomes easier than admitting to themselves that they are capable of more. It is important, then, to reframe the pain of being ignored. Instead of letting it diminish you, let it affirm you. If your presence was not powerful, no one would need to silence it. If your achievements were not striking, no one would need to downplay them. If your light was not bright, no one would need to look away. Sometimes the absence of applause is the clearest proof that you are doing something worth applauding. But let us not harden our hearts against those who ignore us. Their silence is not always rooted in malice. Sometimes it is simply the language of their own unhealed wounds. They do not know how to say, "I see you." They do not know how to say, "You inspire me." They do not know how to say, "I wish I had your courage." So instead, they say nothing at all. Compassion teaches us to recognize this, not so that we excuse disrespect, but so that we do not mistake hidden admiration for true rejection. What does this mean for you? It means you must not let the silence of others control the volume of your voice. Do not shrink because they do not clap. Do not stop because they do not cheer. Your worth is not dependent on recognition. You must walk knowing that sometimes the very ones who pretend not to see you are the ones who cannot stop watching. Sometimes the very ones who withhold words are the ones carrying secret admiration in their hearts. And if you stop shining because they did not acknowledge you, you rob the world of the very light that made them tremble. You must also learn to celebrate yourself, to clap for yourself, to affirm your own strength. Waiting for admiration from others is like waiting for the sun to rise in someone else's sky. You carry your own light, you carry your own power, and if others cannot say it, you must say it to yourself. I am worthy, I am strong, I am rising. So the next time you feel the sting of being ignored, pause before you let pain take root. Ask yourself, is this rejection or is this admiration in disguise? More often than not, it is the latter. And when you realize that, the silence of others no longer feels like emptiness, it feels like confirmation. Confirmation that you carry something they cannot deny, even if they cannot yet say it out loud. There comes a time in every journey when the weight you are carrying is not made of stone, nor wood, nor anything you can touch with your hands, but of invisible burdens placed upon your shoulders by others. Expectations. The unseen contracts people write for your life, contracts you never signed, but somehow agreed to by silence. Expectations to always show up, to always be available, to always put yourself last so they can stand taller. And for a while, you may carry it. You may walk through life bending your back under the load of should and must, believing that love means compliance and that loyalty means sacrifice without end. But eventually, your spirit grows tired of being bent. Eventually, you realize that the weight pressing you down was never yours to carry. When people begin to ignore you, one of the first things that falls away is their expectation of you. They no longer call on you to fix every problem. They no longer lean on you for every answer. At first, it feels like rejection. You wonder why they do not come to you as they used to, why they no longer depend on you, why your presence is not demanded in every moment. But if you shift your gaze, you begin to see the hidden gift. Their silence has lifted the weight. Their ignoring has released you from chains you did not even realize were binding you. The burden of their constant need, the prison of their endless demands, suddenly it is gone. Expectations are heavy because they are relentless. They do not care if you are tired. They do not care if your soul is weary. They whisper, give more, do more, be more, or you are not enough. And without noticing, you begin to live not for yourself, but for the approval of others. You wake up every day rehearsing who they want you to be, shaping your choices around their judgments, measuring your worth by their satisfaction. That is not living. It is performing. It is carrying a weight that does not belong to you. So when distance comes, when silence falls, when people begin to ignore you, see it as the crumbling of that stage. The audience has left, and you are no longer forced to act. You are free to breathe. You are free to ask yourself, what do I want? What do I need? Who am I when no one is clapping, when no one is demanding, when no one is watching? That freedom may feel strange at first because you have been conditioned to believe that your worth is tied to service, to usefulness, to sacrifice. But as the days pass, you begin to see that your worth was never in their hands. The weight falls away, and in its absence, you rediscover yourself. There is a powerful truth in this. Expectations are not the same as love. Love does not demand performance. Love does not keep you chained to a script. Love accepts, allows, and embraces. Expectations, however, are conditions disguised as affection. They say, I will value you if you do this for me. I will honor you if you meet my standard. I will stay with you as long as you play the role I assigned. When people ignore you, many of those conditions are stripped away, and what remains is truth. If they truly loved you, their connection will survive without the weight of expectation. If they only loved what you provided, their silence reveals that the bond was never love at all, it was transaction. Carrying expectations is like carrying water in a sieve. No matter how much you give, it is never enough. The more you pour, the more drains away. And the more you try to meet what others demand, the more they find to demand. But when you let that weight fall, when you step out from under their shadows, you realize you do not have to keep pouring into emptiness. You do not have to keep proving yourself to people who only see you as a source of their own comfort. You can pour into yourself. You can conserve your energy for the places and people where it is truly valued. And here lies another gift. When the weight of expectation falls away, so does fear. You stop fearing their disapproval because you realize their approval was never enough to sustain you in the first place. You stop fearing their silence because silence no longer equals rejection. It equals space, space to grow, to explore, to rest. You stop fearing the loss of people just because you realize that losing the weight they placed on you is sometimes the very thing that allows you to rise. Think of a bird trying to fly with stones tied to its wings. No matter how strong its feathers, no matter how wide its wingspan, the stones drag it down. It flaps harder, struggles more, but the sky remains out of reach. Only when the stones fall away can the bird soar as it was meant to. You are that bird, and expectations are the stones. When people ignore you, when they step back, when they remove their demands, you may feel abandoned. But in truth, you have been untied. The sky is open again. The horizon is waiting. This lesson also stretches into relationships. Many of us believe that to be loved is to be needed, but being needed is not the same as being cherished. To be needed is to be used, to be valued for what you provide. To be cherished is to be seen, to be honored for who you are. When expectations fall away, you begin to see who cherished you and who merely needed you. That revelation can sting, but it is also liberating. It clears the path for you to form connections rooted in authenticity rather than obligation. And what about your own expectations? For just as others place weights on us, we often place them on ourselves. We tell ourselves, I must always be strong, I must never fail, I must always be available, or I am not worthy. These self-imposed expectations can be heavier than anything others give us. But when people ignore you, when the world grows quiet, you are forced to sit with yourself. And in that quiet, you may discover that the only person you ever needed to satisfy was you. The silence teaches you to loosen your own grip, to forgive yourself for not being everything to everyone, to allow yourself to simply be human. So, though the sting of being ignored may pierce you at first, let it also remind you of the freedom hidden inside it. You are no longer bound by the invisible contracts. You are no longer imprisoned by their needs. The performance has ended, and the curtain has fallen. In the silence, The weight slips away, and what remains is you, unburdened, unchained, ready at last to breathe without apology and to live without carrying what was never yours to hold. There are moments in life when the greatest gift you can receive does not come wrapped in ribbons or spoken with applause. Sometimes the greatest gift comes in the form of silence, in the form of absence, in the form of being ignored. It does not feel like a gift when it arrives. It feels like rejection, like abandonment, like something precious has been taken away. But if you wait, if you breathe, if you listen closely to the rhythm of your own spirit, you will come to see that being ignored is not always a curse. Many times it is protection. It is life shielding you from noise that was never meant to enter your ears, never meant to disturb your peace, never meant to touch your spirit. Noise comes in many forms. It comes as gossip that drains your energy. It comes as arguments that circle endlessly with no resolution. It comes as criticism born not of love but of bitterness. It comes as distractions disguised as opportunities, voices that clamor for your attention but add nothing to your purpose. If every voice that wanted access to you were granted it, your mind would be overwhelmed, your heart would be exhausted, and your spirit would be drowned. So sometimes, without you even asking, life builds a shield. That shield looks like people ignoring you. It feels painful, but in truth, it is saving you from chaos. Imagine walking through a crowded marketplace. Vendors shout, children cry, music blares, conversations overlap until you can hardly think. In that space, your mind cannot settle. You cannot hear your own thoughts because the noise of others is too loud. Now imagine stepping into a quiet garden, no voices, no demands, only stillness. In the quiet, your thoughts return. Your spirit exhales. You begin to see clearly what was blurred before. That is what it feels like when you are ignored by those who were once loud in your life. The marketplace has gone silent, and though at first it feels lonely, it is really a space of clarity. We are taught from an early age to equate attention with value. If people are calling you, needing you, watching you, then you must be important. But not all attention is blessing. Not every voice that seeks you deserves your response. There are people whose words are designed not to uplift you, but to pull you down into their storms. There are people who thrive on drama, who want to entangle you in their chaos so that you forget your own direction. To be ignored by such people is protection. It spares you the noise of their turmoil and leaves you free to listen to the quiet voice within yourself. Sometimes the ones who ignore you are the very ones whose noise would have distracted you most. If they had continued to call, to demand, to intrude, you would have lost your focus. You might have bent yourself to their will, given your energy to their problems, and drifted away from your own path. Their silence, though it wounds your pride, actually guards your purpose. It gives you the freedom to stay on course, to preserve your strength for what truly matters. We must also learn to distinguish between silence and absence. To be ignored is not always to be forgotten. Sometimes it is simply to be spared. Life knows that every conversation shapes us. Words enter us, and once inside, they can grow roots. If the words are heavy with judgment, they weigh us down. If the words are filled with bitterness, they poison our joy. By keeping certain voices silent, life keeps those seeds from being planted in your soul. The quiet is a fence, not a rejection. It is a guardrail keeping you from falling into places you were never meant to go. And yet, because we are human, our first instinct is to chase. When someone ignores us, we knock on the closed door, we beg for answers, we long to be included in conversations we do not even realize would wound us. But if we could step back, if we could trust the silence, we would see that every unanswered call, every unopened door, every withheld word was grace in disguise. We were being kept from noise that would have cost us peace, joy, even identity. Think of a singer preparing to perform. Before the song begins, there must be silence. The instruments are tuned, the voices are hushed, the audience waits. The silence is not emptiness, it is preparation. In the same way, when you are ignored, when voices fall away, you are being given a moment of quiet before the music of your true purpose begins. The noise has been cleared so that your song can rise without distortion. It is also important to understand that noise is not always external. Sometimes it comes from within. The doubts, the fears, the rehearsed criticisms echo louder than any outside voice. Being ignored can silence that inner noise too, because it forces you to stop seeking validation. When others are not clapping, not calling, not affirming, you are pushed to listen inward. And there, in that inner quiet, you begin to discover your own strength. You begin to trust your own judgment. You begin to hear the still, steady rhythm of your own heart guiding you forward. So when the sting of being ignored comes, pause before you call it rejection. Ask yourself, what noise have I been spared? What words did not enter my spirit because someone chose silence instead? What chaos did not consume me because the door was closed? You may never know the storms you were protected from. You may never see the traps you avoided because life wrapped you in silence. But if you trust the process, you will come to understand that being ignored is not always the end of connection. Sometimes it is the preservation of your peace. There is a strength that grows only in quiet. There is a clarity that arrives only in stillness. And sometimes the only way to reach that stillness is to have people turn away, to have the noise of their voices fade, to have the demands of their presence lifted. It is painful at first, yes. But if you lean into it, you will see that silence is not emptiness, it is protection. It is space for your soul to breathe, for your spirit to rise, for your purpose to sing. There is a season in life when the echo of absence becomes louder than the sound of presence. You reach out and no one reaches back. You look around and the circle that once felt so full now seems thin. It is in those moments when people turn away, when silence surrounds you, that the soul feels its most fragile. But it is also in those very moments that a deeper lesson begins to form, a lesson more valuable than applause, more lasting than affirmation. Being ignored teaches you to love yourself in ways you never thought you could. It pushes you to discover that the foundation you have been searching for in others has been waiting inside you all along. When you are surrounded by voices, it is easy to mistake their attention for strength. Their laughter makes you feel secure. Their recognition makes you feel valuable. Their praise makes you feel capable. But remove those voices and suddenly the truth is revealed. Your confidence was not rooted in yourself, but in the chorus around you. That revelation is painful, but it is necessary. For what good is confidence if it can be stolen by silence? What good is worth if it disappears when others stop clapping? When people ignore you, life is teaching you to dig deeper, to find a strength that does not rely on outside noise, a love that does not depend on borrowed validation. Self-love is not something you stumble upon. It is something you build. It begins the moment you realize that being overlooked does not mean being unworthy. It begins the moment you stop asking, "Why don't they see me?" and start declaring, "I see myself." At first, that declaration feels small, even forced. You may say it while tears still run down your face. You may whisper it while your heart still aches from the silence of those you wanted near. But with time, the whisper grows. With practice, the small flame becomes a steady fire. And soon, the love you sought from others begins to flow from within, steady and unshakable. There is a misconception that loving yourself means you do not need anyone, but that is not the truth. Loving yourself means you are not destroyed when others cannot give you what you hoped for. It means you can appreciate love when it comes, but survive when it doesn't. It means you are whole, with or without applause, with or without constant affirmation. To reach that place, you must often pass through the valley of being ignored. That valley forces you to stand alone. It demands that you comfort yourself, cheer for yourself, encourage yourself. And when you learn to do that, you carry a power that no silence can ever steal again. Think of the seed buried in soil. It is ignored by the world above. No one sees it, no one praises it. It sits in darkness, covered, forgotten. And yet, in that silence, it begins to push roots downward, to find strength within itself, to grow in secret. By the time it breaks the surface and the world notices, it has already built a foundation deep enough to weather storms. That is what self-love does. It grows in silence. It is born in the seasons when no one sees you. It is cultivated in the nights when you must be your own comfort. And once it has grown, it cannot be taken away. Many people never reach this lesson because they chase noise all their lives. They beg for attention, search for validation, perform endlessly for applause. They patch the holes in their spirit with temporary approval, never realizing that true healing must come from within. But when you are ignored, you are pushed out of that cycle. You are given no choice but to sit with yourself, to ask yourself hard questions, to confront the parts of you that you tried to cover with other people's love. It is not easy, but it is holy work. It is work that transforms you from dependent to independent, from fragile to unshakable. And here is the beauty. Once you love yourself, truly love yourself, the silence of others no longer wounds you the same way. You may notice it, but you do not break under it. You may feel the absence, but it does not consume you. Instead, you begin to choose relationships differently. You no longer cling to anyone who offers attention because you are not starving. You are full. And in your fullness, you attract people who see you clearly, who love you genuinely, who do not require you to shrink in order to be embraced. Self-love becomes a filter, protecting you from counterfeit connections. This strength of self-love is not arrogance. It is not pride. It is peace. It is the quiet knowing that you are enough, that you are whole, that you are worthy regardless of who does or does not recognize you. It is standing in front of the mirror and smiling, not because someone else said you were beautiful, but because you finally believe it yourself. It is walking into a room without needing to be the center, because you carry your own center inside you. It is the freedom of no longer begging for crumbs because you have learned to sit at your own table. Self-love also teaches resilience. Life will always bring seasons of loss, of distance, of silence. People will come and go. Applause will rise and fade. But if your strength is rooted in self-love, you will endure. You will bend, but not break. You will weep, but not be destroyed. For you will know that your worth is not borrowed, not temporary, not conditional. It is eternal. It is yours. And perhaps the most powerful truth of all is this: once you learn to love yourself, you teach others how to love you. When you treat yourself with respect, you show others the standard. When you honor your own boundaries, you show others how you expect to be treated. When you refuse to beg for attention, you show others that your presence is valuable with or without their validation. The strength of self-love becomes a shield, a guide, and a light. So if you find yourself in a season of silence, a season where you are overlooked, ignored, or forgotten, do not despair. See it for what it is, an invitation. An invitation to discover the strength of self-love. An invitation to plant roots in your own soul. An invitation to build a foundation so strong that no storm of rejection, no wave of absence, no flood of silence can ever wash it away. For in the end, the most unshakable love you will ever know is the love you learn to give yourself. There comes a moment in life when the silence around you feels deafening. The calls grow fewer, the invitations slow down, and the people who once filled your days with constant chatter begin to vanish into their own corners of the world. At first, it feels like a wound. You ask yourself what you did wrong, what part of you was not enough to keep them close, what flaw made them turn away. But if you look deeper, if you allow your spirit to see beyond the ache of absence, you will recognize a greater truth. When people begin to ignore you, it often means you are rising. It means you are moving into a higher room, a place not everyone can enter, a place not everyone is prepared to follow. Life has levels just like a house has floors. On the ground level, everyone can come and go. The doors are wide, the windows open, the traffic heavy. But as you climb higher, the rooms become smaller, quieter, more sacred. Not every companion is meant to climb those stairs with you. Some were only ever meant to walk with you on the ground floor. When they fall away, it is not always because they dislike you or wish you harm. Often it is because the air you are breathing now is thinner, more refined, and not everyone is ready for that altitude. Their silence is not rejection. It is evidence that you have shifted into a new space. Think of the eagle. When it soars, it rises higher and higher until the smaller birds cannot keep up. Crows may follow for a while, but eventually the air grows too thin for their wings and they fall away. The eagle does not stop flying to chase them. It does not lower itself to pull them back into its company. It keeps rising because it was built for heights others cannot endure. In the same way, when you begin to move into your higher room, some people will stop calling, stop visiting, stop walking beside you. Do not see it as abandonment. See it as confirmation that you are entering the place you were always destined to reach. There is a loneliness that comes with growth. The higher room is not crowded. It will not be filled with the same noise, the same easy comfort you once knew. At first, you may long for the familiar voices, the familiar patterns, but the higher room is not meant to feel familiar. It is meant to feel transformative. It is a space of stretching, of expansion, of deepening. And to grow into it, you must be willing to let go of what once was. The silence of others creates the room for your spirit to unfold. If everyone followed you, if everyone crowded into that higher place, it would no longer be sacred. It would be the same ground floor you left behind. There is also truth in this. Not everyone can celebrate your rise. Some will interpret your elevation as arrogance. Some will see your growth as distance. Some will resent that you are climbing when they chose to stay where they were. Their silence may be fueled by their own insecurity. Their ignoring you may be their way of protecting their pride. But understand this, your journey upward is not an insult to anyone. It is a call to fulfill your own potential. If your presence in a higher room reminds someone of their own unclaimed purpose, that is not your burden to carry. You are not meant to dim your light so that others feel comfortable in their shadows. Moving into a higher room also means your vision changes. From the ground, you see only what is close, what is pressing, what is urgent. But from above, you see the horizon. You see possibilities, patterns, paths that were invisible before. Not everyone can understand the way you speak once you have seen from that height. Not everyone can share the conversations you now carry. And so, many will drift away, not out of malice, but out of mismatch. Their silence becomes the space in which you learn to speak a new language, the language of purpose, of clarity, of destiny. It is important to remember that a higher room does not make you better than anyone else. It simply means you have accepted a different calling, a different stage of growth. The people who no longer walk with you are not less than you. They are simply not meant for this chapter. They have their own journeys, their own rooms, their own paths, and just as you cannot force them to climb with you, you cannot allow yourself to remain in a place you have outgrown simply to keep them comfortable. The silence around you is an invitation to keep climbing, to honor the elevation life is offering. In the higher room, you also meet yourself in ways you could not before. Without the noise of constant company, you hear your own voice more clearly. Without the weight of constant expectation, you feel your own strength more deeply. Without the distractions of the crowd, you discover the sacred stillness of your own soul. The people who ignore you may never realize the gift they have given you, but their absence has carved out the space where you now encounter your truest self. Do not fear the thinning of the crowd. Do not mourn every voice that goes silent. Instead, trust the process of elevation. Trust that the silence is not a void but a passageway. Trust that the room you are moving into is preparing you for new relationships, deeper connections, and greater purpose. For in every climb there is loss, but in every loss there is transformation. And one day, when you have settled into that higher room, when your vision has expanded and your strength has deepened, you will look back with gratitude. You will see that being ignored was never about rejection, it was about direction. It was life's way of lifting you higher, of clearing your path, of guiding you into the space where you were always meant to dwell. So when people suddenly start ignoring you, do not beg for their words or chase their shadows. Instead, listen to what the silence is teaching you. It is saying you are growing, you are rising, you are learning who truly belongs and who was only passing through. And remember this, you were never born to be seen by everyone. You were born to shine for the ones who can truly recognize your light.